Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we begin tonight with the ongoing wildfire battle in Los Angeles. More than 170,000 people are still under evacuation. Firefighters are making progress, but evacuees anxious to return to their devastated neighborhoods will have to wait at least another week. Maribel Gonzalez reports from.
As crews work around the clock to get a handle on the deadly Los Angeles County wildfires, there is hope teams will make gains this weekend, but the reprieve may not last long.
With those Santa Ana winds, it's going to be very, very dry out there, so there's going to be probably a return of more critical fire weather conditions to the area. So we have a little respite for the next couple of days through the weekend, but then the Santa Anas do come back beginning of next week.
For some, a return home is likely months away. Contaminated water and landslides are still big risks. While some residents understand the delay, others are growing frustrated.
I think they should let people go back and get everything start rolling.
Quite honestly, I think it's a bad idea for any of the people that are coming up just for nostalgic purposes. Unfortunately, I hate to say that.
City and county leaders are trying to assure the public they're actively working to reopen impacted neighborhoods.
Every foot that we can give back, as soon as we can give back, we are giving back. We're not holding areas until we get a larger area that we can repopulate. Every day we're having those conversations, and every day, anything I can give back as a unified command, we're giving back once it's safe.
I promise you that, as your chief, that the LAFD will stand with you as you continue to clean up and rebuild your communities.
In Pacific Palisades, California, Maribel Gonzalez, KPBS News.
And we have all watched in horror as firestorms swept through Los Angeles neighborhoods. Here in San Diego, an effort today to prevent the same thing from happening locally. KPBS reporter John Carroll explains.
The sound of San Diego firefighters spraying down chaparral could be heard this morning in the San Carlos neighborhood next to Coles Mountain. But it wasn't water coming out of those nozzles.
So this product is called Mighty Firebreaker. It's an EPA-approved product.
EPA approved because former San Diego Fire Chief Jeff Bowman says there's nothing toxic in it.
It's a citrus-based, food-based product that can be sprayed months in advance on dry vegetation or homes, and it'll stay fire resistive that entire time.
Bowman says it will last for 6 months, and the only thing that can remove it before that is heavy rain. And there's no rain, heavy or otherwise, in the forecast. Today was the first time the product has been sprayed on open land, but the San Diego Fire Rescue Department has been using it along the San Diego River to keep encampment fires from spreading. So how do we know for sure it works? Bowman did his own experiment on his Christmas tree, which he sprayed 5 weeks ago.
It's as dead can be, and we put a 3,000-degree torch on it and it wouldn't burn. A dead Christmas tree won't burn. I've never seen anything like it.
Bowman and Tosca say their hope now is people will start to put systems in place that will spray the product on their home if wildfire approaches. New homes can build it in during construction, but they say existing homes could use it too. They say it won't be cheap, probably around $25,000, but just balance that against losing your home. The priority for the fire department now is using the spray to protect exit routes.
Did you see the vehicles stacked up on the escape routes in LA? They ended up leaving their vehicles because they couldn't move. We have a device that will spray at 300 feet up the hill. So no fire would burn toward the exit route. People could leave without the fear of dying in their cars.
The San Diego Fire Rescue Department will continue spraying in fire-prone areas. Once and if fire comes, the hope is this Mighty Firebreaker product will be the ultimate example of an ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Well, temperatures are staying pretty consistent as far as tonight's lows, 47 degrees. One thing to keep in mind now that the pattern has changed to more of an onshore flow, we're going to see more of those low clouds, the fog, as we get into the overnight hours and early morning. So keep that in mind as you're going throughout your weekend, but the pattern is going to change again. I'll tell you all about that coming up.
Today, San Diego congressional members announced an additional $250 million federal investment to combat cross-border pollution. And with that, more than $650 million has been secured for the South Bay International Wastewater Treatment Plant expansion project. Meanwhile, our media partner KGTV followed up with UC San Diego researchers about their findings on South Bay air quality in South Bay. And they say that the data supports that the spread of hydrogen sulfide is most severe when there is high river flow and little to no winds.
This moment is an indicator of a major issue, right? And this is kind of setting the stage for our follow-up reports in, such a complex mixture of sewage and industrial waste. There's a lot to be seen.
And the UCSD study is under peer review. And on a related note, the CDC released a survey of South Bay households showing nearly 70% have had a health symptom from the sewage crisis. School district leaders and state lawmakers are responding to fears about mass deportations under the incoming Trump administration. KPBS education reporter Katie Anastas says they are proposing policies to limit ICE's access to schools.
The San Diego Unified School District is the second largest district in California. Last month, its school board adopted a resolution reaffirming that it's a welcoming district for all students. The resolution says the district will not permit ICE to access its facilities without a warrant.
The data is clear, both in relation on immigration issues and on LGBT plus issues, that discrimination is harmful, that worrying about the immigration status of your family and deportation is harmful.
State lawmakers are proposing further limits. Assembly Bill 49 would require ICE officers to provide a warrant and written statement of purpose. They'd also need permission from a district superintendent or a daycare center's director.
I introduced Assembly Bill 49 to send a message to all of our immigrant students, immigrant families throughout the state of California that we have their backs.
Current ICE policy says officers should avoid arrests and searches at schools and other sensitive locations. The Department of Homeland Security named other protected areas in 2021, including school bus stops, playgrounds, child care centers, foster care facilities, and group homes. Immigration attorney Tammy Lynn says even without changes to policy, threats of mass deportation can have far-reaching effects.
When you have this rhetoric, it scares these communities into not sending their kids to school, which impacts everything else, right? Enrollment rates may drop, which impacts the funding for that school, which impacts the district. It goes all the way down the line.
The San Diego Unified School District has also published a webpage with resources for immigrant and refugee students and families. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
KPBS has been reporting on the potential impacts of Trump's presidency on the San Diego border region since his re-election. Gustavo Solis has led that coverage for us and joins me now with more. Welcome, Gustavo.
Hi, Maya.
So can you tell us about San Diego's unauthorized immigrant population?
Yeah, it's a pretty big and diverse group of people. I spoke with experts at UC San Diego who looked through census data to get a sense of the size and scope. And roughly in San Diego County, between 150 and 170,000 people are living without status. And there's an additional 150,000 people who are U.S. citizens or immigrants with status, but live in mixed status households. So between those two groups, that's 300,000 people who could be directly impacted. And I mean, it's a huge number, right? For context, the population of Chula Vista is about 300,000.
Yeah, that is a huge number. And with that significant population, what could mass deportations look like here in San Diego?
Well, the folks I've been talking to kind of break down the impacts in two categories, right? One is the societal impact of just losing that population, right? Some of these folks are students, workers, teachers, lawyers, parents, just neighbors, right? Just that fabric of the community could be greatly impacted depending on how big the numbers are. The other focus, the other impact is that on the economy. And for that, I actually talked to Tom Wong. He's an associate professor at UC San Diego, and he's the leading founder of the U.S. Immigration Policy Center over there, and this is what he had to say.
San Diego thrives on tourism, and the backbone of the tourism industry is service. And when it comes to the undocumented population in San Diego County, again, nearly 1 out of every 5 undocumented immigrants works in the service industry.
So he was just speaking about the impact on the tourism industry. And as you remember from last fall, we had record-breaking numbers in tourism in terms of how much money people spent here. So it could be devastating for the economy.
And Gustavo, of course, you've also reported on the challenges of the Trump administration. So what would be the obstacles once they decide to carry out mass deportations?
Yeah, there's a couple of just logistical ones and resources, right? It's very easy to say mass deportations. It's much more difficult to actually get it done. Money alone, it takes a lot of money, a lot of people to do it. So Congress would have to approve those extra tens of billions of dollars to fund it. They would actually need to hire additional personnel, both at ICE and Border Patrol. They would need to build facilities to detain all the folks that they want to deport. So it could get held up because of money, logistical challenges. Diplomatic challenges are another big one. Mm-hmm. Right now, countries like Cuba and Venezuela and Nicaragua are not accepting deportees, so we would have to come up with a way to encourage them to accept them.
All right. Well, Gustavo, we appreciate you following this story. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Maya.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas moves closer to being implemented. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And as the Trump presidency approaches, a Yale University history professor uses the past to look to the future. Tim Snyder spoke to Public Matters reporter Amita Sharma about what the next 4 years might look like.
In your book on tyranny, you write, the mistake is to assume that rulers who came to power through institutions cannot change or destroy those very institutions, even when that is exactly what they have announced that they will do. Explain this quote's relevance to America right now as we head into President-elect Trump's second term in the White House.
Yeah, it's completely normal for aspiring authoritarians to try to win elections and then get inside the system and make the system less democratic. We have to remember that democracy is a matter of the spirit and a matter of the future, and not just a matter of the outcome of a given election.
A lot has been written about people voting against their own interests. In a place like San Diego, where the cost of rent and childcare are sky high, the median price of a home is up to 9 times the median household income, and we have some of the highest electricity rates in the country. Are people who are just struggling to get by more apt to know their interests and vote accordingly under these conditions, or are they even more susceptible to manipulation and possibly tyranny?
In order for people to make good choices about the future for their children and themselves, they have to have a certain level of access to shelter and food. They have to be able to live in a decent way. And so the people who are trying to undo democracy, it will turn out, are also the same people who are trying to make lives harder. And I'm afraid we're going to see a good deal of that in weeks and months to come.
We reported recently that thousands of Democratic voters in some of San Diego's poorest communities either sat out the November election or voted Republican, many citing the high cost of living, pretty much echoing what happened elsewhere in the country. If Trump goes ahead with promised tariffs, the prices of groceries and other goods will go up. How do you expect those voters and Wall Street to react? And what might resistance look like?
Yeah, I think that's the key. If you want to oppose this, you have to have an alternative to it. You can't say, oh, look, we told you so back in November of 2024. You have to say, look, if we win next time, if our group is in power, this is what we will do. you have to have some kind of a vision. If it's just about the past, you're going to get trapped and you're going to lose. The fact that Trump is going to make a lot of people miserable, which he will, is only good for the opposition if the opposition is ready to say, okay, we have something that's better than 2024 for you. You can't get trapped in competing about like which past you're going back to, Trump the 1930s and the Democrats 2024. You have to have a vision of the future where people can say, oh, okay, I now see it. The penny has dropped. I understand how, if I vote for you guys, things might change for the better.
Do you feel like Democrats have a vision for the future?
I think they were. The Democrats are trapped by Trump because what Trump forces them to do is to simultaneously be the party that defends order and be the party that has a vision for the future, and that's a tough role to have. Now that Trump controls effectively the Supreme Court, both houses of Congress, and the executive branch, the Democrats have a chance to be that party of the future. So I think it's a chance they have to seize, especially in the next 6 months as the contradictions of the Musk-Trump program start to reveal themselves. The Democrats will have to take advantage of those openings. I'm not saying that they can or they will. I'm saying that that will be the time for new people to profile themselves.
Elected officials across San Diego County say threats against them have gone up dramatically in recent years. Some of that intimidation came through social media. You have said social media is set up for disinformation and drives people to do things that are anti-democratic and against their own interests. How optimistic are you that these platforms will get regulated, given that the big tech appears to have Trump's ear?
Yeah, I would add to your list anti-human. The algorithms train us to react negatively to other humans and to treat humans as enemies. I think the fundamental problem is that they are anti-human in that basic sense. And if you're anti-human, then you can't be pro-democratic. You can't be pro-freedom. I'm not optimistic, I'm sad to say, about that at all. We've let ourselves get to a situation where there are too few platforms, and those too few platforms are too unregulated. The hope would have to come from citizens who unhook themselves, but also from school districts and states who choose to enact policies that allow young people to at least have time at school, which is away from the screens.
Professor Schneider, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
My pleasure.
And Public Matters is a partnership with KPBS, iNews Source, and Voice of San Diego. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/Public Matters. The November election saw widespread shifts toward the Republican Party, including in South San Diego County. Voice of San Diego reporter Jim Hinch says voters in the traditionally Democratic stronghold swung notably to the right.
Democrats won most races in South County, but the margin of victory shrank. In National City, Joe Biden won more than 2/3 of votes in 2020. But in November, Donald Trump gained ground by nearly 10 percentage points. The swing to Republicans was even larger in border communities such as San Ysidro and Nestor. Voters gave several reasons for the shift. They said rising costs, growing homelessness, and a surge of immigrants at the border made them feel insecure. Leaders seemed unable to tackle major problems, and that led to a desire for change. Michaela Polanco is an independent from Bonita. She voted for Kamala Harris, but she says other people in her community didn't because they felt Democrats had failed to deliver.
I believe the shift of the people in the South Bay voting more for Trump versus Kamala Harris had a lot to do with the immigration that was in our border here in San Ysidro. People really believe that Trump will at least have more of an enforcement to the immigration rules and regulations, whereas under the Biden and Kamala Harris administration, it was more loose, or they weren't really tying up the enforcement.
Even registered Democrats expressed disappointment with their party's performance on major challenges facing the San Diego region. Local Democrat Sandy Naranjo says it could be the start of a statewide political realignment if more progress isn't made.
There's going to be a shift to the right because we have Democrats in power and they're not doing what they're supposed to do.
For Voice of San Diego in National City, I'm Jim Hinch.
And to see maps showing how voting shifted across the region, go to kpbs.org/vote-shift. A breakfast for San Diegans who honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King every day through their character and service. The 40th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Human Dignity Breakfast was held this morning at the Town and Country Resort Hotel. More than 1,500 community members came together for the event honoring Dr. King.
This brings people back to the time when Dr. King was alive, when he was working in civil rights, when he was making all the sacrifices that he made, that he was trying to really work to open up doors for people of color, for women, for equal opportunity, many things that he sacrificed, in fact, gave his life for.
And she adds that the struggle still continues now, so it's important to take time to understand the legacy of Dr. King. The event was also a call to action for peace, tolerance, and unity.
Well, we're getting a little bit of a break from the Santa Ana winds this weekend, but because of that onshore flow, we're seeing the low clouds and the fog, especially in those early morning hours. So something to keep in mind, because that can impact visibility if you have to get out and about on the roads first thing for your Saturday. We are seeing cooler temperatures this weekend for some of us. So let's go ahead and break everything down, starting with what to expect for this evening. Temperatures tonight in the low 40s for Oceanside, upper 40s for San Diego there. We're in the 30s in Borrego Springs and Mount Laguna tonight. Tomorrow, I mentioned things are a little bit cooler. We're in the low 60s for Oceanside and San Diego, 64 in Ramona there, 69 up in Borrego Springs, then of course cooler in Mount Laguna. Now I mentioned we're getting a break from the Santa Ana winds. Not for long. As early as Sunday night and Monday, we're going to see the return of Santa Ana winds for a lot of us in Southern California. And of course, this means an extreme fire risk. Once again, we're looking at 40 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts with that AccuWeather local storm max of 85 miles per hour. So don't let your guard down as far as fire danger. We got a little bit of a break, but that extreme fire risk is coming back. Now let's talk about your 5-day outlook on the coast. First of all, 61 for both your Saturday and your Sunday and Monday. And then we're going to start to warm up for Tuesday. We're still seeing a little bit of those kind of seesaw back and forth temperatures going from 69 Tuesday to 66 for your Wednesday. Further inland, we're seeing partly cloudy skies at least throughout the rest of the next 5 days here. 63 is your high for Saturday. We're in the 70s by Monday and Tuesday, and then continue to warm up as we look ahead to Wednesday. Now, mountains and desert, this is where we are not seeing the cooler weekend. We are in the 40s for Saturday and Sunday, and then temperatures actually drop come Monday and Tuesday. For our desert 5-day outlook, we're at 69 for your Saturday. And then we're staying relatively consistent as we look ahead to Monday. But by the time we get to Tuesday and Wednesday, that's when temperatures are going to go a little bit back and forth. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather's Anna Azalian.
Well, Hillcrest Cinemas has closed, but Digital Gym Cinema is filling the void this weekend with a quartet of indie films that are stirring some Oscar buzz. KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando runs through the offerings.
As I've mentioned before, Digital Gym Cinema is a haven for film lovers. Founded 12 years ago, it provides a home for the volunteer team of Film Geeks programmers, a group that includes me, and stands as San Diego's last stronghold for independent film. The best film screening there this weekend is from Ground Zero, Palestine's official entry for Best International Film at this year's Academy Awards. It's an anthology of 22 short films, each offering a very personal perspective on what it means to live in Gaza today. The collection captures the diverse range of experiences from these filmmakers. In 24, a man describes coming under attack 3 times in 24 hours and being dug out of rubble twice. And in Sorry Cinema, a filmmaker uses his clapboard to build a fire. But the story that impacted me the most was Soft Skin. This animated film, made by children, depicts how their mothers wrote their names on their arms and legs to make sure their bodies could be identified if they were ever killed.
أنا ماما كتبت اسمي على جسمي عشان لو انقصفوا يعرفوا يجمعوا آبائهم.
Despite the immense challenges of filming in Gaza, these filmmakers have created a stunning collaborative project. And perhaps most amazingly, many of the films focus on joy, hope, and beauty, despite horrific conditions. Also showing is the French film Flow, which has already won acclaim and awards. It's about a group of animals trying to survive a sudden flood. This wordless animated feature is both captivating and gorgeous. Honora is also screening. It's a love story of sorts involving a woman named Honora, or Ani, and the rich, spoiled Russian brat she impulsively marries. Just as I was growing bored with their antics, the film throws a curveball and brings in a new set of characters that refresh the action and completely win me over. Yura Borisov as Igor is the best thing in the movie. With very few lines and not a lot of screen time, he creates a character that's genuinely and unexpectedly sympathetic. You can also catch A Different Man. It's a fresh and inspired take on disability and deliberately challenges the audience to rethink how they perceive someone who's different. I admire the clever approach, but also found the film to be erratic and problematic in places. Adam Pearson, an actor who has neurofibromatosis, delivers a thoroughly engaging performance as the film asks us to consider what's more important, how we perceive ourselves or how others see us. You can catch all these independent films throughout next week at Digital Gym Cinema. Beth Agamando, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Hope you have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.